Welcome to Independent Solutions Ask the Expert. We did a live webinar covering keyboard management basics. If you missed this session or previous sessions, information on Ask the Expert is available at the end of the video. Please enjoy. So without further ado, this is keyboard management basics. Let's get into it. So first things first, we need to go into what is actually a keyboard when it comes to ProfitTrack and ProfitTrack terminology. So if we go into Setup, Register Settings, Keyboard Layout, and either double click on your keyboard, for me in this case that would be Roadhouse, or click Roadhouse and then edit. So in here we'll go into the keyboard editor, and this is all in regards to that one question. In the top left here you've got a bunch of different options. These are all keyboards individually, they're keyboards. So you can see here, this is the main screen, the main menu screen. This may be similar to one that you may see at your site. So that there is a keyboard. So when we're talking about keyboards, it's an individual screen and each individual keyboard has a name. So this keyboard here is main screen and so on. If we go into the drop down, we've got subtotals and report menus and fuel report menus, and those are just the names of different keyboards. So with that being said, we'll go through some of the functions of the keyboard. So we're going to go through this keyboard box here and the edit key here. So we just went through the drop down, that's selecting different keyboards. And then new, edit, copy, delete, and save. So new creates a new keyboard for that drop-down list. Edit edits the current keyboard. So if we didn't like the name, for example, main screen, we could go main screen current, for example, and go OK. So that renames it. Copying it copies this keyboard layout, so all the buttons as they are, but then it will ask you for a new name, which we'll do in a minute. Delete deletes the keyboard that you've currently got selected in your drop-down. Save saves the keyboard as it stands. We won't talk about a lot of these component buttons. That gets quite advanced, so we just leave it on button and we'll talk about this functionality here. So this button is two things: edit key and go to KB or keyboard. And whichever function you cannot see is the one that's selected. So right now it's on edit key. Right now it's on jump to keyboard or go to keyboard. Now go to keyboard is for any button like you got on Fuel Discount, Fruit, Forecourt, and Shop here, where you got that little triangle in the bottom right. That little triangle indicates that when you click on this button, you're going to go to a different menu. Now that we're there, we can click on main menu, takes us back. Now, if we didn't want to, if we just wanted to change how that button looks, so it doesn't say Fruit, if we go edit key and click on the button, so now that edit key is hidden, we're now doing the edit key, Fruit, and we can change it to, let's just say Fruity, just for the example of what the button or what the function does. So there we go. So that's the idea behind that button there. So just keep in mind, whichever one is not shown is the function that you're going to be doing, whether it's going to the keyboard or editing the key. So at this point, we're going to go through and create a keyboard. Now, this is going to be a Fruit keyboard, and we'll talk about that in just a minute. Now, you can see here, we're going to base it off this menu here. So we've got lock, log out, void, cancel, error correct, all these functions which we use on just about every keyboard, including subtotal, hold, sale, recall, and quantity, that sort of thing. So you could create one from scratch and go new and then create one, or you could copy. I'm going to copy just to save myself some time so I don't have to recreate all these buttons. So we'll go copy. We're going to call this juice, all capitals. Here we go. So we copied. It's just going to paste it. There it is. It looks exactly the same. So from here, we start modifying the keyboard to how we want it to look. So because we're putting juice items on here, we don't need to do too much in the terms of modifying. We just need to delete basically the stuff, the blue keys here and some of the numpad. We don't need a numpad for what we're doing. So we'll go through, right click on the buttons, and we'll talk about that. So you can set the font from here, change the color of the button, or change the jump to. You can also link products, and in this case, we're just going to delete just because we're cleaning up the keyboard. So I'm going to go through and delete all of those. And this red button. Now, once we've done this, we're going to move a couple of the buttons around and talk about creating them. So we could keep the numpad buttons. We don't really need to for the juice menu, but that's where it comes down to what you're going to use the keyboard for. So if you were going to create a new main menu just because you don't like the way the current one looks, that's fine. You'll want to keep your numpad probably then, in which case you'd leave that there. Totally fine. So we're going to go through and talk about creating now. So we got all of these blank spaces. Now these blank spaces are going to be Independent Solutions gray if you don't put a button there. Now we'll create one here really quickly. So you can either left click in a square and it'll come up asking you to create, which we'll do. So we'll do height by 3 and width by 3. So there's the size of the button there. There's the preview. So on the button text, we're going to say watermelon. Now I don't have a watermelon product in this system, which is why I'm doing it. You'll see why in a minute. Now the font, personal preference on this, I'm fine with Verdana, which is what it'll choose by default, but you can feel free to go through and choose a font that you like. I'm going to choose bold. Just I feel like that gives the key a better aesthetic. Again, personal preference on that. Click OK. So button appearances, you've got color and second color and down color too. So color and second color is left to right and right to left. Down color is up to down and down to up. So I'll show you what that means. So color is left to right, so we'll choose green. So from left to right, it's shaded at green. Second color, right to left, we're going to just choose red because watermelon. Right to left, it's gone red. So that's what I'm saying by color is left to right, second color is right to left, down color is up to down, and down color 2 is down to up. Just something to keep in mind. Up image, so we could click on this little select button here, and it would go through and go, hey, please find a image to put on the key. So like I said, I don't have watermelon here, we got apples and bananas. So we'll just cancel that. Functionality, by default, it's going to go to direct PLU and ask you to put in a PLU number. Like I said, don't have one. We're going to give this as an example product. So at this point, we're done. That's the button created. We're happy with the size. We're happy with the coloring. So click OK. There it is there. Now, because I didn't have the product and couldn't put the PLU into the functionality, we got that red cross on it. Right, so we're going to do this again, but we're going to do it with an actual item this time, which is bananas. So if we go bananas, and we'll go color yellow because it's banana. Color and second color yellow because banana. There we go. So there's bananas. Functionality, we're going to link to either 2001, because I know the PLU for bananas is 2001, or F3, and I can search banana. And there's the banana there. Once done, click OK. We don't have that red cross, and it looks okay. Again, I'd probably put that in bold, but that's fine. So to do that, just go in font bold. All right. Now, we're going to do apples here, because apples also had an image, and I want to show you what an actual image looks like. So we'll do that again. Click and drag, by the way, is how I'm doing this instead of like individually clicking and changing the height and the width. So clicking and dragging will give you the box as well. So button text. Now, I'm going to show you what this looks like, and then I'm going to remove it because I don't like how it looks when you put an image in there. We've got apples there. We go, okay, there's the apple, put it in. And I like it without the text. So apples there, if I just remove that, like that's self-explanatory, that's an apple. I think the text over the top just makes it look a little bit crowded and it's not quite necessary. Personal preference again, but just something to keep in mind. So there's that. We got the Apple button. It's linked to a product. No red cross. Everything's working. So that's more or less how to create the buttons as standard. Now those images there, I've just grabbed the image there and banana there, which I could link to this button. We're not doing that at the moment. I just grabbed these from Google. So if we go online, www.google, go to images and search apples. Pretty sure it was like the first one. Yeah, it was the first one that came up. So I right-clicked, save picture as, and you want to make sure it's saved as a JPEG or a bitmap. Any file type other than those two, because it's not registered as an image, Profittrack won't recognize. So make sure it's a bitmap or a JPEG when you save it. Now, you don't want a high definition picture when you do that either, mainly because it's going down to such a little button. It's not going to matter anyway, and high definition pictures will just take up a lot of space. And when you're doing a lot of buttons, it's really not worth it. You're going to just chew out the computer's resources and make the whole keyboard slow. No point to do it. No point to do it. Just leave it as a normal resolution image. No need to go HD or 1080p or anything fancy with that. All right, so now that we've talked about creating buttons as default, just basic buttons, we're going to talk about some of the functionality, a little bit more of the advanced functionality. And then we'll go through some of the functionalities that is commonly used. There is a bunch of functionality in each key that we won't be talking about. There's approximately 150 functionalities in total. I think we're going to talk about 8 of them, the common ones, and you'll see why in a minute. But before we do that, one thing that is missing from this keyboard is a back button. So you can notice there in the top right, I've left a blank spot next to the receipt near the quantity. We've got a blank spot here, and I'm going to create a back button. So the whole point behind creating a back button is you've gotten into this keyboard, and that's totally fine. However, you now don't have a way out of it except for going into subtotal in the bottom right there. So to do that, you go into functionality, go to link to other keyboard as the functionality, and then link to whichever keyboard. So if it's a back button, you want to go back to the menu that you selected from. So we're going to go to this keyboard from the main menu. So we want to go into main menu when we go back, which is that main screen current that we had before. So now when we go to the keyboard, we go back, here's the keyboard. All right. So problem here is that we can't get to that keyboard from the main screen. So we'll use Fruity again, change the functionality. It's already linked to other keyboard, Fruit, but this time we'll take it to our current one, which is Juice. Okay. And there's the keyboard, right? So that's the idea behind the button. You don't actually have to call it back. You could actually say main menu because that's much more accurate to what it's doing. But the back button is just linked to other keyboard, to whichever keyboard you had gone from, which in this case was the main menu. Now, when you're creating your keyboard, if you're creating one from nearly scratch like I am here, basically a new keyboard entirely, you may want to keep in mind if there's something that would naturally flow afterwards. So Fruit's a hard one on that one. So I'll give a poor example here. Apologies on that. But if you were doing a deal with like Fruit and something in the hot box, maybe if you buy an apple, you can get a pineapple fritter for $1 or something to that effect. You would create a new key there to naturally flow to another keyboard, such as Hotbox or drinks or ice, maybe something like that, where your operator will easily be able to go, okay, they're going to get an apple, next keyboard, they're going to get this next item that flows really well with the Fruit. And the idea behind that is just to keep things moving quickly, because otherwise they'd have to go Fruit, back button, then find the keyboard, then find the item. And even though that's only maybe 3-4 seconds on a point of sale, once you start doing that for X amount of transactions, that adds up, and it slows things down a bit more. So just something to keep in mind there. So we got the back button there. That takes us back. So we'll talk a bit about the functionality on the keys themselves. So if we just create a button here, and we'll go into the functionality directly. So we'll start with the alpha keys. We're starting at the top. We've got alpha A through Z, and we've got all these period marks, semicolons, slashes, stuff like that. So if you wanted to create a keyboard that actually has an alpha keyboard on it, so A, B, C, D, etc., you can absolutely do that, A through Z. Same thing with, and we'll talk about it in a sec, but numeric does the same thing. The idea behind that is if you needed to, for whatever reason, type in letters, you can do it through creating a manual keyboard. We'll go next to direct PLU we've talked about, but discount is the next biggest one. Now, I don't have any discount set up in this system, so it's just going to be blank. However, if you do have discount set up in your system, it'll come up there. If you're a fuel site, maybe 4 cents per liter off, or for a lot of the supermarkets out there, you might have like a percentage, 2% off sort of thing. In which case you click OK, and it would link a discount to the button. So you'd click the button and it would apply the discount. Now, much like the alpha, you've got the numeric. So numeric, as you can see here, you just click on that and assign that to one of the buttons, and that will allow it to come up as a number instead of a alpha. That's totally fine. So the next two is product search and transaction search. So we've got product search there. So you go into there and it will go, okay, please fill out the information for the product, and you could go mother ... and it will bring up all the mother energy drinks or any product that has mother in it. And that's the idea behind the product. Now the transaction search, which is just called transaction search, does a similar thing where it will show you all the transactions that have been performed for the day or the last 100. So if a customer comes back 15, 20 minutes after the fact, you can go, okay, that's fine, find the transaction, receipt, there's the receipt for the customer, and give it back to them. So by that token, while we're talking about receipts, on the left-hand side here, we've got this white box, which is the receipt viewer. So when an item's scanned, it shows up in this box. Now, just keep in mind that if you do change the functionality of that to anything besides receipt viewer, when you scan an item and go to this keyboard, it's going to be blank. That box is going to stay white. It's not going to show the product, which is one of the biggest things we see come into technical support when keyboards have been modified. Now, in this screen, you can change the font if you do want a larger one. So I know a lot of people say when you scan an item, you may want it to see bigger, and that's fine. You may want it smaller. If your receipt viewer wasn't like that, if it wasn't quite tall, you could change the size of it so its width was really, really wide instead of being really, really tall. So it was along the length of the keyboard instead of the column. That's fine too. And that's just something you need to keep in mind with the font of the receive viewer. So that is more or less the functions of the buttons there. So we're going to save that and send that down to the point of sale that we've got here. So just sending that down now. There we go. All right, so if we now go into the keys, there it is. So Fruity now links to our keys here. So as we said, watermelon, big red cross, because it's not linked to a product, it's not going to do anything when we click on it because it can't find the item. Bananas and apples here. So bananas is going to link, bring up the product. Apples, same thing. Now you may be thinking right now, hang on, I didn't put an image on bananas at all. It was just yellow. I specifically did it in yellow. How come there's an image there? Well, in the shop file in Profit Track, if I go and bring up bananas, what I've done in the PLU under POS, you can add an image. Now, every time you create a point of sale key that links to that PLU, it will put an image on it automatically because the product has an image on it. Now, the benefit of that is if you have a product that's going to appear in multiple different areas for whatever reason, you could add the image to the actual product. So that would be things more or less like condiments, or ingredients, or add-ons. So ice, for example, may be a big one for that sort of thing. So you could add an image to the product. Benefit of that is, as well as if it is on the product and you're going through and modifying all your keyboards, you don't need to worry about the images at all. You can delete like your fruit menu and then create a new fruit menu with those items, and you don't have to think about where the images are because they're on the product. Just something to keep in mind. It is a bit finicky when you use it that way, purely because, as you saw in the keyboards before, you don't see the image. It's just a yellow button in our keyboard editor. There's nothing fancy on that. It doesn't look like there's an image, even though there is. So just keep that in mind if you are going to use that functionality. So that is the functions. That's Keyboard Management Basics. I know I didn't go too much into. Thanks for watching. On screen now is the link to all the Ask the Expert sessions. For information on upcoming sessions, please call us on 1800 020 946.